Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Justin. We're back at the movies for another review. We're going to be continuing on with our ongoing underrated movie review segment of the channel. We're going to be doing a follow-up to a movie I did about 6 months back. We're going to be doing the 1990 Irvin Kershner-directed Robocop 2. All right, so Robocop 2. I definitely find this movie to be vastly underrated. You don't see it, is it as good as the original? No. But it continues on with a lot of the same, satirical elements of the first one, and that's what makes it great. You bring in the same excessive capitalism of the first one with products like Sunblock 5000 and Magnavolt. This woman caked in this blue stuff because ever since we lost the ozone layer, they say 20 seconds in the California sunshine is too much these days. And it's silly. And that's what I like about it is Kershner doesn't do it as well as Paul Verhoeven in the first one, but does it well enough to where it's enjoyable. And I love that OCP is still trying to manipulate everything to get their city built. They want to make Delta City where Detroit now stands. I like that aspect. The things I don't like the most is I liked Tom Noonan as Kane, but I don't like that they turned Kane into a robot, a Robo-Kane. Because it feels like he's still a giant, oversized robot, whereas Robocop is, a little bit bigger than a man, can do things a man can do. Kane just gets more firepower, but he's still this massively big entity and clumsy in a sense. Yes, he thinks like a man to an extent, but he's still hindered by the fact that he's a giant machine just with advanced capabilities. So that's a little, that hurts, I think. Noonan wasn't quite as good as Kurtwood Smith, but I liked his character. I liked that he is single-minded in his addiction to the drug he created called Nuke. His wanting to have all the money and all the power, and he'll pay off cops to do it, and he's got a 13-year-old kid who's willing to kill people doing his bidding for him. I like that. I just don't like what happens to him, and I don't like Belinda Bauer being she's a weasel who's trying to move up in the company. That I don't have a problem with, that version of her character. But there's just something about her character just doesn't resonate as well. But, again, this is an underrated review. I wrote down some reviews by critics. I won't mention their names as per usual. Robocop 2 is all machine and it's all vile. That's wrong. Again, there's elements of the story that are, carry on really nicely from the first one. Alex Murphy wanting to, thinking he's a man still, despite the fact he's dead and he's a robot. He still thinks he's a man, still acts like a man until the corporate, reprograms him to be a servant, basically. So that review is just blatantly wrong. With its desensitizing bloodlust, Robocop 2 contributes yet another ugly note to this already demoralizing season of sadism. I don't agree with that either. If anything, yes, there are scenes, especially when Kane becomes a robot and, he's got these high-powered, guns on his shoulders. Yes, there's, big deaths. But I would argue that the deaths in part one are more, sadistic. I mean, Robocop has a knife, has a spike in his fist that he stabs in Clarence Boddicker's throat. Boddicker's just spurting out blood. So I don't think it's as bad as the first one. Blood wise, it's awesome. And it's silly in a sense. Like, you're shooting these guns at this giant robot. You really think that's gonna work? No. Even Robocop does it. He's firing his standard sidearm at a giant robot. It's not gonna work. So it does get a little silly, but it's enjoyable. I don't think it's sadistic or by any stretch of the imagination. And lastly, you may never know whether Murphy has completely turned into a machine, but the movie has, and boredom sets in. I've never once been bored by this movie. And if you're bored by this movie, then clearly you don't take into account that it's a sequel, it's a follow-up, and you really need to tie it into the first one to really get the enjoyment out of the second one. And even the third one. So, again, these are all critics, and as I've said, I don't like critics. I think they're wrong. I don't think they take into account other aspects of the movies themselves. You have to really, if you're going to watch Robocop 2, you have to take into account what happened in Robocop 1. They're not standalone movies. None of them are. And the third one, again, that one I can understand a lot more, a lot more anger towards because Peter Weller wasn't in it, but it still has its qualities. Now, I gave the original Robocop, again, a biased opinion because it's one of my all-time favorites, an 8.7. This doesn't get anywhere close to that. This doesn't even get into the 8s. This is probably a low 7 movie. I'd say I'm going to go 7.1. I still think it's an enjoyable movie. Weller, Nancy Allen, Robert DeQuay, they're all great in their roles, and DeQuay would really shine in the third one. It's still a good movie, and it's a good follow-up. It ties in nicely to the first one, in my opinion. So I'm gonna say it's a 7.1, and that's, it's an underrated, especially sequel. It's an underrated sequel. And that's what a lot of this channel is probably going to be about. Is going to be about sequels, But Robocop 2, 1990, it's a 7.1. It's not nearly as good as the original, but it's better than what a lot of critics and a lot of people say about it. That's my review. If you guys like it, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And I will see you guys next time at the movies. Take care.